One, uh, today we'll be looking into a profitability case study. It's one of the classic type of case studies asked across all type of job roles. If you're looking for management related job roles, whether it be it consulting, be it management roles in, let's say, your legacy companies like JSW, Tata, like that, as well as any new age startups. Everybody generally have case interviews these days for any of the senior roles they are trying to fill in, and profitability case is one of the most common cases which is seen in such interviews. And reason being, first of all, by the use of case study you are able to assess a person's logical thinking, like how they structure a problem. And many a times you'll see that within profitability case study, in some interviews, mostly the medium to complex interviews, we put a guesstimate hidden inside as well. So that kind of gives the interviewer an opportunity to kind of expand or reduce the case study. So let's say if I am giving you a case study, I see that we have time, you are going at a good pace, maybe I'll ask you to solve the guesstimate. If you're not going at a good pace, I'll maybe just give you some assumption numbers, and then we'll continue with the case. So it kind of gives freedom both for the interviewer to assess you deeply and like go further on some tangent that you might mention, or let's say you mention some bias, or let's say you are not computing the numbers well. I can open the guesstimate for you right there and then, and see like additional layer of like how fast the calculations are and things like that. So we'll get right into it. So today the case study which we have in front of us is related to a hotel chain facing declining profits. And today I'll be using a bit of a different approach in presenting. So I figured that in these days, most of the interviews which are happening are still happening online, especially the lateral interviews. And many a times while taking interviews, even I feel that I'm not very comfortable when the interviewee writes down the calculation on their own paper and then come up with the answers, because many a times the drawings, the small drawings and mini calculations that you do are much more interesting to me rather than just throwing numbers, because if the numbers are off or if I don't follow the logic correctly, I might not get a good impression of you. But if you show me the logic, how you are going through the logic and things like that, it becomes much easier. So I feel personally that having an Excel, blank Excel ready, and kind of showing some logic structuring on the Excel can be beneficial. But of course it is as per user discretion, and people to people it depends, person to person, like companies to companies also it depends. So no hard and fast rule, just that I'm trying something new and I'll try to use only Excel to kind of show the breakdown of this entire case study. Okay, so to start with, we'll just read the problem statement. So there is a mid-sized hotel chain operating 50 hotels across major cities has seen its profits decline by 25% over last year. Despite stable revenues, the CEO wants to understand why profits are falling and what should be done. So I have highlighted a few pointers in the problem statement itself, because the interviewer here is trying to give some facts right away. So starting with like how many hotels are there, 50 hotel. It is a mid-sized hotel, and then it is spread across major cities, has seen its profits decline by 25%. And mind you, a lot of people get confused between profits and revenue. It is two very different things. So always whenever interviewer gives you a case, make sure, like if it is not explicitly said, make sure you ask a question and understand if revenue decline is a problem or a profit decline is a problem. Okay. um, and then the time period is also given that it has been observed over the last 1 year, um, despite stable revenues. So in this case, they are kind of directly giving you a hint that revenues are stable, profits are declining. And in a minute, I'll show you the the logic tree as well, which I generally follow. And there you'll see that here you can directly jump to cost side of things by asking like minor questions. But for the sake of completeness, I'll take you through the entire logic so that if at all there was a problem on revenue side of things as well, you could have assessed that. Okay. Some of the case facts that are given are number of hotels 50, room per hotel 200, total rooms, that's obvious. And then occupancy rate is given. Okay. Average daily rate is given, and then ancillary revenue. We'll go into these one by one. I have just tried to structure the facts in two buckets. So generally what you will see is, in any complex interview or mid to high complexity interviews, you'll see that all the case facts are not revealed upfront, and the reason being that interviewer sometimes let the case go in its own direction. So they will have certain set of facts to begin with, and then as and when you go forward with the logic and things like that, interviewer can give you subsequent facts to help you navigate through some of the calculations. Okay. So always make sure, like whenever you are stuck at a calculation, don't spend too much time just thinking about like where am I going wrong and what should I assume. Just ask the interviewer that do we have the numbers for this and this, the two variables which you are thinking of. Let's say if the interviewer says that okay, take a logical assumption, then you just give him or her a quick logic how you are arriving at the assumption, and this just go ahead with the assumption. Okay, cool. Okay, so now to begin with, any time you get a profitability case where profit is on decline or revenue is on decline and things like that, we always have this. I'll just take a copy of this. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we always have yeah, so we always start with this simple logic tree. Profit is nothing but revenue minus cost, right? Just a second, I need to do my setup. Okay, perfect. So profit is nothing but revenue minus cost, and as I said that for the sake of completeness, we'll be analyzing revenue as well, although we got a hint that it might be related more with cost. But anyway, so once it comes to revenue, I'll again copy this rather than pasting. Okay, perfect. Revenue can further be broken down into average price into volume. Till now we are keeping it very generic. So these logic trees kind of apply to all industries, any kind of business, and then we'll also make a logic tree which is specific to hotel chains. Okay, so revenue is average price into volume. So we kind of have the revenue side of piece understood, and then on the cost side, we generally break cost into fixed and variable cost until unless the interviewer explicitly gives us some cost specific thing, or if you already know a value chain, how the value chain is for a given industry and where you are placed in the value chain. Okay, so and it is more common in cases, let's say you are a bottling plant, then you are placed in certain part of the value chain, and your your cost will have certain different angles than a clear cut case of a hotel chain. Okay, so that is the thing. Okay, perfect. Now these are some of the generic logic trees. since these are pretty easier to understand, now I'll go to the hotel chain specific logic tree. Okay, and then we'll start getting deep into how to apply these here. Okay, so yeah, in any hotel related case study, this is the simplest logic tree that you can easily develop. And just like once you start get doing multiple cases, you'll understand that it's very easy to easy to understand, like this is the bare minimum of any hotel, and anything extra that you'll see will just be on top of this. Okay, so hotel is majorly getting its revenue from room. First of all, that is its core business. So their room revenue you can easily compute if you know number of rooms, how much, what is the frequency or what is the percentage of time that room is occupied, because that is only when you will get the revenue from the room. And then average daily rate, at what rate you are lending the room. Okay, and always play in averages, because don't go into rabbit holes like um, what the pricing changes every day and things like that, festive pricing and things like that. So always try to keep it average and not get into the rabbit holes here, because it can sometimes like suck up time, and then later you can end up delivering a very inefficient half baked case solution. Okay, until unless the interviewer um, asks you to get into average daily rate, because there might be some problem related to festivities and things like that. Okay, cool. The other major part of revenue in hotel business is ancillary revenue. These are your food or the restaurant within the hotel, events, and then spa. Okay, and of course there can be one or two more events, like if the within the events, if corporate and personal family related events are different, that can be a case. Food for internal and external customers, so internal customer would be the people who are staying, and external customer would be if the restaurant is open to external as well. But I would not go into those nuances right now, until unless those are either mentioned in case, or while solving the case you feel that it is something that interviewer wants you to get into. Okay, so you have to follow interviewer's trail here. Okay, great. Okay, so now in our case we'll first assess whether the revenue side has a problem or not. Okay, so here we have our number of rooms given to us. Number of rooms are given to us. Yeah, so number of rooms are given to us, that is your 200. So why to even do that, we'll directly take 10,000. So there are 10,000 rooms. Occupancy rate is 0.7, 70%, and average daily rate is $150, right? So here the yeah, so here the I just lost my chain of thoughts. Yeah, so here the room revenue is yeah 1.5 million. Let me actually convert this into currency, it is much easier. Okay, so let it be in rupees for now, or let me just, Mac can be very weird sometimes. Okay, so let it be in rupees for now. I'll just remove the zeros for easy reference. Perfect, cool. Yeah, and so yeah, I think that a good point kind of came up here. So if interviewer is mentioning certain currency, make sure that you are following the same currency while solving the problem, because many times what happens, the dollar and rupee conversion kind of becomes an issue, and it can mess up the cases sometimes. So I'm just keeping it as a generic number right now here, and it is easier for me to also understand. So this is basically 1.05 million. So I'll just write it down here. 1.05 million. Perfect. So this is my revenue from rooms. Okay. Now ancillary revenue, which is food, event, spa, until unless a very specific guidance has been given on any of these ancillary revenue or how to calculate these, this is generally a percentage of room revenue. That is how we generally take it. Okay. And if you see here also in the case facts, it is given as 20% of room revenue. So we don't need to get into details here. Okay. So basically just your 0.2 okay, no, okay, perfect. Yeah, all right. Okay, so now these are your daily revenue numbers. Okay, and maybe I'll just delete this one for now. So if you just convert it to annual revenue numbers, then we just need to multiply this by 365, multiply this by 365, and then total revenue. Yeah, which is dollar. How much is this? Is this 459 million? Seems like that. 459.9. Okay, so 460 million. Cool. So 460 million is my revenue here, annual revenue. And yeah, so 460 million is your annual revenue. Now the next question that comes in is, so what, like my annual revenue is 460 million, how does it compare with my previous revenue, previous year's revenue? Because that is only that's the only way where I'll be able to compare whether the revenue has increased or decreased. Okay, so ask a question to interviewer, and as I said, like in this case, since interviewer was kind of hinting towards that the problem lies on the cost side of things, and that's why the case in the case facts the previous year revenue was not given. But just for the sake of completeness, I'm just mentioning here that we'll ask the interviewer like what was the revenue in the previous year. So let's say interviewer says that the revenue was around 440 million, and it is in the ball, not 440 because that then it will be a bit of a change. So let's say it was like 458 million or so, and then it's kind of similar, so stable, no problem. Okay, now we know that there is no problem on the revenue side of things. Okay, so next comes the cost side of things, right? So we know now that the revenue side of things has no problem as such. Okay, so revenue, actually I'll just mention that revenue is constant, stable, in a stable range, and no major increase or decrease. Perfect. Now I'll just create this myself. So whenever it comes to cost can be broken down majorly into two buckets. One is fixed cost and variable cost, and let's just quickly start making more buckets below. So within fixed cost, if you think in the hotel business, generally the major fixed cost is your rent or lease. So if you, let's say, if you look at if you look at asset heavy hotels, which generally take like longer leases, or they generally buy the land itself, develops its own hotel. There the cases are different, but most of the hotels are generally leased out or rented. Or if you have seen Mahindra Holidays, they generally lease it from a different hotel for a really long period of time, and then it kind of operates it under its own brand name. So multiple type of business model exist. You don't need to go into the nuances. A basic understanding could be that one of the major fixed cost in hotel chain business is rent or lease, and then of course the next layer is your uh, management salaries, and this will include everything like right from the um, yeah hotel senior managers to the staff level employees. And then the third is IT system, which has now become a bit of a prominent, because in many hotels right now you'll see that they have pretty elaborate conference rooms for hosting like corporate events and things like that. So IT system can be a good um, what do I say, good bucket to keep in your fixed cost. And of course, like, interviewer can choose to tell you that okay, IT system cost is not too much in percentage terms, so you can ignore it, but it's always best to put out the major buckets in front of the interviewers so that they know that you are able to break down a certain bucket into multiple buckets, and then you pursue one or two buckets within them. Okay, cool. On the variable side of things, if you see yeah yeah one of the variables that are here would be um, housekeeping utilities, housekeeping, or maybe let me say housekeeping and utilities. And this will include all your refilling of the room related stuff, laundry, things like that. So anything that depends on the occupancy, and if the occupancy is not there, in general those are not like refilled at the same rate, are your variable expenses. Okay, then comes your food and beverages. Of course, the food food the hotels provide you has a cost related to it, so it has a different cogs, so that needs to be mentioned. And then many hotels have contract staff or a short term staff. So basically, a lot of times you'll see that hotels during the festive season um, hire a lot of people on contract for cleaning, for security purposes, or if it's a beachfront, then for security purposes outside the hotel as well. So these are some of the variables which I have seen from experience, and of course feel free to add more variables to it. Okay, now if we just quickly go back to the case facts, it has given us some numbers. So it tells us that generally um, the fixed cost is 40% of the entire cost, and the variable cost is 60%. Okay, that's good. Second thing is the cost. Last year total cost was 320, current year total cost is 360. Okay, so if you see, the cost has increased quite a bit here, 40 million, right? So 40 million increase has happened here with stable revenue. So of course the profitability as well as the profit is gonna go down, correct? So that's why kind of the interviewer told all these facts upfront, that the decline has been seen in the profit with stable revenues, because they wanted us to jump directly to the cost. So this case is basically maybe less than 15-20 minutes case, because here we can directly jump to the cost, and within the cost the interviewer wants us to look at certain numbers specifically. So we already know that the profit decline is of 40 million, and because that's totally because of the cost, because the revenue is stable in the ballpark. And then we have also identified a high level cost drivers, and we see that the majorly the cost is coming from variable side of things. Now the next question for the interviewer is, have we acquired not acquired have we taken any let's say um, additional hotels under lease, or additional land parcels under lease for development, or anything like that. And that question is kind of aimed at understanding whether the fixed cost has increased. And then in this case the interviewer tells you that okay, the fixed cost has not increased, the number of hotels are constant, no new hotels are being developed right now, management salaries are more or less in line, and the number of people employed are more or less same. IT systems, there has been no major change here as well. So fixed cost side of business is similar or under controllable range, so that's not a problem. Okay, then the interviewer guides you to look at the variable side of things. Okay, now variable side of things are majorly, it is coming as housekeeping and utilities, food and beverages, contract stuff. So let's say interviewer, and here I want to mention a point that many times the bucket you break down a problem into might be very high level at the beginning, but always make sure that you are ready to make changes. So in this case, let's say I made I made the buckets as fixed and variable, and then very generic: rent, lease, management salaries, IT system, housekeeping, food, beverages, contract stuff, because this generally covers all the major cost buckets in a hotel chain industry. But at the same time, if I now know that the variable cost is a problem here, I need to again reassess that have I broken these buckets really well. If not, then I should be open to make those changes right away. Okay, so in this case, since I know that variable cost is a problem, we need to ask the interviewer that first of all we need to come up with a very easy bucketization of what all variable costs could be, an elaborate table actually, and then we'll confirm with the interviewer like whether they are agreeing with this table, and then we'll see if any assumption is required or not. Okay, so variable cost has increased, which is causing the problem here. Let me make it red because variable cost increasing is a problem for us. Okay, now yeah, so variable cost, now I'll say that within utilities, housekeeping and utilities, I'll be bit more clear here, because if you see, energy is one of the highest variable cost that can come from a room, and that goes because only when the room is occupied, the AC, the air conditioning, the refrigeration, the TV unit, all those are active, which can give certain amount of expense on a daily basis. If the room are bigger, if the balconies are left open, or in general the to how it kind of depends on who is occupying the room and how they are occupying the room. Not to go into the nuances, but energy cost is one of the major cost. Second is labor, and labor here is contract staff, which again depend on the occupancy. If the occupancy rate is really high, the contract staff can be brought in, and some of them will go into fixed cost as well. But if let's say it is due to festivities and things like that, it can vary. Third one is food, and then fourth one is a miscellaneous bucket which we can keep, and then we can ask interviewer for their guidance, like if we don't find any problem in the first three, and then interviewer can tell us like if we need to consider something else, or at least if there are no major problem in first three, we can brainstorm or split the hair bit more from the miscellaneous bucket before going to the interviewer and asking them. Okay, so in this case we okay, so in this case what basically happened was or let me just put down this first: electricity price per unit, and electricity price per unit and consumption. Okay, and then for labor, increased outsourcing is something which is going to cost us here more, and if there is some attrition cost attached, and here some like in food, why the cost will increase is and I'm just thinking major menu change. Menu change itself will not increase the cost of the food, but like long back I was seeing this case where the major menu change was that they included tuna, and tuna had like single vendors in that area, and because of those single vendors, the vendors had a upper hand in pricing the tuna, and that ended up being one of the problem, because that was one of the delicacies which was added, which became really famous, and the suppliers were not managed well. So since then I have just started including major menu change. It's better to just strike it off later rather than not mention it at all. Okay, and then general inflation, if we'll see, like many times because of general inflation the food cost in itself rises, and if it is not reflecting in the overall cost to the tourist or to the consumer, then of course your profitability will go down. And yeah, as I said, I'll just mention it as a separate bucket as well. Poor supplier contracts. So in this case what happened was they got to know that their energy consumption was really a problem. Okay, and here the energy consumption, the price per unit was constant, and that's why nobody actually paid any attention to the price per unit. The consumption was increased, and maybe I'll just check this one. The consumption increased by a lot. Okay, and when we got to this point, like electricity per unit is same, the number of hotel rooms are same, occupancy rate is kind of similar, then why the consumption has increased drastically? Okay, so then when we started splitting here, then we understood that around 60% of the AC were due for maintenance, and the maintenance supplier was there was a single supplier for maintenance in that area. Yeah, single supplier maintenance in that area, and then these 60% of the ACs which were due for maintenance were old as well, so it was effectively causing more consumption. And since the ACs were not working properly, the consumers or the tourists who were staying in those rooms were keeping their balconies open, which was further increasing the load on the AC. So, and of course, you are not supposed to know these things in very detail, and like even the interviewer understand, like they'll not ask you that why the AC will consume more. They'll just stop at maintenance. So basically, if maintenance is not happening properly, the AC's efficiency will go down, leading to more energy consumption. That's it. A layer below that is something which at least I have seen in my personal experiences. If you like all the modern AC or even the ACs which were very like older generation ACs, there, if there was an auto switch, then it will basically consume more energy if it has to constantly cool down a place, rather than like bringing the place to a certain temperature and then just like managing that 2 degrees Celsius difference or 1 degree Celsius difference. And that's what you see in modern ACs, like they have a cutoff. So every time, let's say you set the temperature at 24, they'll bring it to 24, and the moment it goes above 24, it will again start and bring it to 24, like that. So here we have come to the conclusion of the case that electricity consumption is a problem which is leading to a major cost rise. And within consumption, once we reach here, then the interviewer will give us the context that okay, yeah, you are right, the consumption has been a problem because AC, 60% of the AC were due for maintenance, and there was a problem related to the supplier because of which it was not maintained, which led to efficiency problem, and hence we couldn't sorry, and hence this became a problem. And apart from this, of course, like once you have hit this, there can be a chance that you started from food and labor and then come to this, or there is a chance that you directly start from this. But in both the cases, you should ask, like, is this the major problem that we were planning to solve here, or do you also see the like if there are any other problem in any of the other threads, and if there are, do you want me to assess any of those problems? It's always good to ask this, so that interviewer can basically tell you like, okay, so you have solved this piece of this piece of problem. Now there is also one problem related to miscellaneous or something like that. So always keep that openness to show the interviewer that okay, you are open to drill down more on this case, and once the interviewer is comfortable, they will just stop the case. So at least what I do is, once I see the logical structuring, numbers are easy, but once I see the logical structuring, sometimes I test by going into like following certain tangents and asking more questions. But generally, if I see a good structure, I'm definitely more comfortable, like the interviewee has done a good job and we can close the case. Okay, so yeah, this was it. This was one of the profitability case which I wanted to discuss today. There are few in line. I'm going to create some more videos and discuss each of these cases. And what I have tried to do here is, what I understood from taking multiple interviews is that within profitability case as well, people are not very comfortable with multiple industries. So what I'll try to do here is, I'll cover few major industries which are generally used during these type of interviews, be it your Bain, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, AT Kearney, Deloitte, KPMG, or any of these management consulting firms, as well as any new age startup. So they will all, like every one of us generally use these major industry to ask questions. And of course, if you are preparing for certain specific company which operates in only one industry, then you need to know more nuances of those specific industry. Okay, so yeah, this was it. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you guys in next video. Bye.